Alright guys, how are we doing today? My name's the Crown Fiend, and as always, we're here for another video. But, before that, you guys know what time it is, right? You saw the thumbnail. You saw the title. We just hit 6,000 subscribers. The Fiend Army is 6,000 strong. And we will continue to raise hell. From this point on until the end of time, we are fiends, we are strong, and dark stories, we fucking love them. Now, I just gotta say, I want to thank every single fiend out there. Like, thank you so fucking much for this shit, man. You have no idea how much this actually means to me, because to be honest, whenever I started redirecting the channel, like the sub count, it slowed down drastically. Like, yeah, ever since I've been putting out more and more darker stories, the sub count's been going down, but we are still making some progress, and I love to see it. And I honestly love all the comments that you guys give me, the support you guys show this channel. Like, I love it so much, so thank you guys for that. And I just want to let you guys know what my goals for this channel actually are before we get into this. So my goals for this channel is I want to be seen as the guy who makes the darkest stories. I want to be known as the best dark storyteller on YouTube. That is my goal, and that is my dream one day, because I want to be able to get up to the point to where I'm as big as, like, what, Plus Ultraman, Masako Hex. I want to get up there with those guys, but I want to be the one who tells the darker stories, where nobody is safe, plot armor is not existent, Deku will die in some what ifs, Deku will live in others. I just want to be known as, like, the guy who tackles the darker side of the what ifs, and I want to be the best at what I do, which is dark stories. So that's kind of where I want to go. I want people to see the name Crowned Fiend and realize, oh shit, this is the guy who will literally kill off any character if it will push the story into a darker path and make the outcome ultimately great. Because what makes a good dark story is not just being dark for the theme of being dark, but is tackling dark themes and having the characters, one, either rise above it, or two, get crushed beneath it. There's only one of two ways you can go with it. You just can't, like, keep the same character going through. It either spirals downhill or it slowly carves a path upwards to the light. And that's what I tried to do with all my what ifs. And I know I was rambling on a little bit, but I seriously have to thank you guys so much. Like, this is literally means a lot to me, and I know a lot of YouTubers say that, and it comes off as a bit, you know, cynical, or, you know, they look down on you and shit like that, but I actually mean that. So thank you guys for that so much. It really means a lot to me. So with that out of the way, let's get into this story with What If Deku Was John Constantine. Now, I'm just going to give you guys a fair warning right here. There is no way in hell I'm repeating every incantation for the spells, because there is just no way I can pronounce that shit. Like, kudos to his voice actor in all the animated movies and the actors that play him, but literally they have stuff that I don't, and I cannot for the life of me pronounce any of those words. So you can fucking sod off for that, you bloody Wonka. And that was my terrible British impersonation, so yeah, let's not continue that for the rest of this either, shall we? But I will be throwing in, like, some of John Constantine's remarks and giving them to Deku. So yeah, and this might have, like, a little bit of comedy sprinkled in here and there, but overall it's still going to be a dark story. So with that, I have to give you guys this warning. So if you guys are uncomfortable with the premise of, one, abuse on children, if you are uncomfortable with, two, sexual harassment, sexual abuse, domestic violence, actual, like, real world death situations given to characters, having people fight and battle with cancer, divorce, cheating, and adultery, then honestly, I probably suggest that you guys don't watch this one. But you guys are fiends, so I know you can handle this stuff. So, let's get into it, and we're going to start this off with right before Deku was born, once again. So, right before Deku was born, John was going around, hopping from city to city, country to country, drinking his way around the world, because, let's be honest, whenever he isn't working, he's trying out the best liquors in the world, and he has an instant doorstep to that anywhere. So, yeah. And John literally just, he's dating Zatanna at the time, and Zatanna actually cheats on John one night while he's away in another country, and, they actually end up she ends up cheating, and actually gets pregnant by that, and refuses to tell John that she cheated. Now, we fast forward a few years, and Deku's born, but right after Deku's born, Hisashi's coming down with cancer. He has leukemia, and he's slowly dying as Deku ages. He's visiting his father in the hospital with his mother day in and day out. So Deku already has like a downside, and he asks if there's anything any of the heroes could do, as his father tries to explain to him the things that heroes can and can't do, and Deku right then promises that he'll become a hero that can do anything and who can cure any type of illness, even cancer. As basically Hisashi looks at Deku, hugs the boy, and says, "I know, you'll try your very best, but just live a happy life, son." And a few weeks after Deku turns 3, Hisashi passes away. As Deku's crying as he's attending his father's funeral with Inko, and Bakago, the next day, he still bullies Deku because he doesn't really care, as Deku is constantly being bullied by Bakago, and it's a lot worse because Bakago knows that all Deku has is his mom, and he even starts, telling Deku that his father died just to get away from him, as Deku would try to fight back, as Bakago would have a group of friends to beat Deku down with, as Deku would just be hurting. His one saving grace one day is when he's watching an old video recording of Zatanna, as she would be performing magic on stage, as Deku would be captivated by magic. And he would go to the bookstore with his mom, as he would look through the magic sections. Well, somebody actually put a book in the magic section that should have been for the 18 plus section, because it was actually the dark arts of the occult. As Deku would grab that book, as on the outside it would just be a golden colored book that Deku would just see, as it would have magical symbols on it, and Deku would say, "I want this one, mommy, I want this one," as Inko would buy it for Deku. And as soon as Deku got home, he would start studying magic from the book. It would take him a few years to actually be able to really tell what the symbols meant and write them down, as he was also having to look up what each symbol meant, as he would start practicing a little bit of the self-control spells here and there. But the main thing that Deku would actually be able to have a grip on is techno magic, magical influence over technology, as Deku would be trying it out, as he would accidentally fry his mom's phone, as Inko would just say, "Did you do that?" As Deku would say, yes, as Inko would be overjoyed with Deku and would say, "I'm so happy that you can use magic, sweetie." As she says, "It looks like this book is teaching you a lot, isn't it?" As Deku would just say, yeah, I'm still learning, but the techno magic came from online. And she says, then what's the book teaching you? And Deku says, it's more advanced forms of magic. I have to master this in order to master that. As Inko would say, okay, do we need to get you another book? As Deku would say, can I? As Inko would say, of course. So she would buy him another book, as it would be the Beginner's Guide into the Occult. And it would have every symbol that's in Deku's first book, and explanations and details on how to use them and how to use them properly. So Deku would keep studying that, as he really wouldn't even worry about Bakago. Sure, he'd get teased at school, but before Bakago could ever catch up to him, he would be heading home. And then Bakago gets his quirk, as Deku would look at Bakago and say, oh, that's cool, you have your quirk. As Bakago says, yeah, my quirk is going to be any times better than what you get, Deku. As Deku says, well, even if I don't get a quirk, I'll be alright. As Bakugo's just like, yeah, right, that stupid magic, we all know it's just a trick, Deku, it's not real. As Deku would say, it is real. As Bakugo would say, yeah, right, you're useless, huh, stupid Deku. As basically Bakugo's like, Deku, yeah, that suits you perfectly, useless Deku, Deku, Deku. As Deku would just be like humiliated right there, but he would remember he has his magic books at home and he'll be able to show Bakago up once he masters magic. And basically Deku would be taken to the quirk doctor, as he would be told he's quirkless. As Deku wouldn't be as crushed by that at all, and basically he would head home and would tell his mom that he mastered a new spell and he wants to show her. And she would say, oh, okay. So once they got home, Deku would be using, his techno magic, and then he would say, alright, it's time to show you the big magic that I learned. And Constantine would be picking up on this magic. It would be faint but strong enough for him to track, as magic's not that used anymore now that quirks are a thing. So if it's not him or Satana, he can pick it up and really track it down. So he'd be tracking Deku down to try and see what he's up to. As Deku bites his thumb, as Inko's like, what are you doing? And Deku says, I need to use my blood for this. As he would draw the satanic symbol on his hand, as he would do the incantation, which, once again, I'm not going to say because I cannot pronounce it, but he does the incantation as a demon appears. As Deku's just like, see, Mom? See? I can summon demons. Isn't that cool? As Inko's just like, what did you do? As Deku's joy turns to sadness, as the demon says, you did well for a young one, boy. Most adults struggle with this spell. You must really have a knack for it. So, to reward you, I won't kill you. As Deku's just like, but I'm supposed to have control over you, and the demon says, you forgot to add the binding spell. And Deku's like, oh no. As the demon would grab Inko, and that's when John would get there, sensing the high level demonic magic that he used. As John would just be like, oh, bloody fucking hell. What the hell is this? As he would look at Deku with the symbol on his hand, he's like, a fucking child did this. Are you bloody mad, lad? As Deku's just like, I don't understand. And I was like, fucking language barrier, fucking cock. As he would just use a translation spell and Deku would be able to hear John perfectly. As the demon would take Inko and throw her into the portal of hell. As Inko would be crying, as Deku would try to rush over there, as John would try to rush to get to Inko, but the demon would close the portal up. As he would try to kill Constantine, since Constantine did originally rip him off on a deal. And Constantine would take a playing card out of his jacket and would throw it at the demon, burning it to death. As Deku would look at that and he would say, "How do we bring my mom back?" As Constantine says, "You can't. She's gone. Forever. That's the price of magic. Where's your fucking father, kid?" Deku would say, "He's dead." And John would be like, "Oh, sod off. You're not going to tell me you're an orphan." As Deku's like, "I guess I am now." As the heroes would appear, since John literally broke Deku's fucking front door in, and people would call the cops and heroes, so they would appear as they would see Constantine. And basically, Constantine is well known throughout the hero community of every nation. They're like, "Fucking Constantine, what the hell are you doing here?" As John would say, "For one, killing a demon. For two, this kid's got nowhere to go. He had any family?" And pretty much, they start to interrogate Deku about what happened. Deku would tell them, and they're just like, "Oh, bloody hell. We don't know any place that could be able to handle him. He knows magic. If he ever gets pressured into anything stressful, he might accidentally use more. We can't risk that. You're gonna have to take him, Constantine." And John's like, "Excuse me, what now?" As they say, "You're gonna have to take him." And John's like, "I live in Britain, right? Not Japan." And they would say, "We do not care. You're the only magical person we can call. Zatanna's not picking up." And John's like, "Fucking Z. Fine, I'll take the kid. Come on, boy." As Deku's like, "Where are we going?" And John says, "Well, if I'm gonna raise you, I'm raising you in merry old London. I'm not about to raise you here in Japan." As Deku says, "But I don't want to go." And John says, "Well, too bad. The powers that be have told you that you're gonna have to go with me. So let's hurry up and sort off." As he would open up a portal, Deku would walk through it, and Constantine would just, before he walks through, say, "You're all fucking wankers," and walk through. And pretty much Constantine formally adopts Deku. Deku is a nationalized citizen of London, and he has to just live with Constantine in a little shitty apartment. As Constantine would teach Deku magic, day in, day out. And eventually, Constantine would run into Zatanna again, as Zatanna would have a little girl with her. And basically, Deku would introduce himself to the little girl as Izuku Midoriya. And she would say, "The name's Yui." And Deku says, "Oh, cool. You're kind of cute." And Yui would just say, "I don't like you at all." And Deku's like, "You just met me. How can you just instantly dislike me?" As she's like, "You're with him. That means I instantly dislike you." As Deku and Yui would grow up, basically competing against each other at least once a month to kind of strengthen each other's magic. And at first, Yui would have a huge advantage over Deku. As Deku would grow older though, and would be more experienced with magic, he would instantly be able to dominate Yui in any of their competitions. So by the time they're 10, 5 years have passed, Deku would have beaten Yui 100 times in a row. So Yui would say that she's done with these competitions, as Deku would be kind of flirting with Yui a little bit, as Yui would tell him to stop. She's not interested in him like that whatsoever, as Deku would just say, "Well, you never know, you might be one day." And she says, "Trust me, you're gonna grow up just like John, and I'm not gonna like you." And Deku's just like, "Oh, come on, love, don't be like that." As she would say, "No, No. As her and Zatanna would disappear, and John would just say, gosh, she's just like her old woman. As basically Deku's just like, yeah, she's just like her mother. Which, yes, Zatanna is Yui's mother in this one. Her father is still the same person, but Yui is Zatanna's daughter. As basically, Deku and John would continue to train in magic, as Deku would become very powerful and skilled in magic, but John would still tell him not to use any magic around him, because John's had enough cleaning up after Deku moments for him to last a lifetime. So, throughout the years, Deku and John would just be living in that little shitty apartment because John got kicked out of the house and Zatanna took the house. And ever since the divorce between Constantine and Zatanna, they really aren't all that well close. So, John takes Deku from job to job with him exercising places, killing demons, and overall just being a royal pain in the ass to the forces of hell. And pretty much that would be good enough for Deku, because he would just grow up with a personality that's like, okay, I'll do the absolute bare minimum to get by, and when we get back I can drink Glen until I pass out. That's pretty much Deku's viewpoint. And yes, UA will be a college, as Deku would still be very smart and intelligent, as he would have graduated high school at UA by now. Well, not UA, but you know what I mean. He would basically graduate high school in London. As John would say, look, you're gonna have to go to college. As Deku's just like, why would I ever need to go to college? And he says, well, for one, Yui's going. And Deku's just like, I haven't seen her in about 8 years. What makes you think I still have an attachment to her? And John would say, well, for one thing, the moment I mentioned her name, you looked me dead in the eyes. You never do that. You still like her, kid. As Deku's just like, so what? Hardly a reason to go to college for. As he says, well, I also know that you've been keeping strong to a promise you made someone a long time ago. Wanting to be a hero that could cure anything, right? Even cancer? As Deku would just look at him and say, don't you throw that up in my face. I watched my father die. And John would say, yeah, well, you're about to lose another one to the same fucking thing. And Deku's like, what do you mean? And John would say, I got lung cancer. Pain in the ass, ain't it? And, well, for one thing, when I die, you won't be sending me off to heaven. And Deku's like, yeah, I already knew that. You're bound for hell. Unless someone pulls a few strings to get you into heaven, I don't see you ever going to heaven. And John would just tell him, yeah, that's right. And I practically only got about 5 years left to live anyway, so how about we hurry this up with you becoming a hero that can cure anything, right? I'd like to live a lot longer of a life than just 5 more years. There's lots of ladies I still haven't plowed yet, mate. As Deku's like, it's a wonder you haven't caught an STD yet. As John would say, yeah, well, at least I'm getting some action. You over there, still a virgin, at 18 fucking bloody years old, man, you need to hurry up and lose that shit or you're gonna be a wanker forever. And Deku's just like, okay, enough. Alright. Jeez, not everyone has to be a whore like you, Constantine. And he says, right back at you, Constantine. As, yes, Deku has had his name legally changed from Midoriya to Constantine since John did adopt him. But Deku's never once called John Dad. He's always just called him either John or Constantine. Either one. It just depends on what mood he's in. And pretty much, John tells him that, you know, Yui got in through recommendation. She's guaranteed to go there. Has a full ride scholarship and everything. And Deku's like, yeah, so what? And that's when a knock on the door happens. As Deku opens up the door and he says, hello. As a man in a white suit, green and yellow hair with glasses, looks at him, and Deku's just like, the fuck you looking at, you wanker? As pretty much he would just say, I'm here for Constantine. Deku says, which one? John or me? And basically the man just hits himself in the face as he wipes it down, and he's just like, John, I'm here to talk to John. As Deku says, right this way then. Don't mind the mess. We haven't had the time to clean up the bottles of Glen. As basically he says, I wasn't expecting it to be tidy anyway. So he would walk in and he would sit down and say, so, this is where you live at, John. You know, it would be better if you were answering my calls. And John says, sorry, mate, if you're not a woman, I'm not inclined to really pick up. As the man would say, or unless I'm King Shark, right? As Constantine would just say, don't ever fucking mention that again. That was a one-night thing. As the man would say, I'm sure it was. And he says, what do you want, Night-Eye? As Deku's just rummaging around the floor and looking for his bottle of Glen that he is specifically saved for today. As he's looking around, he says, John, where the fuck's the Glen Luther? As John would just take a cig of a bottle, he would look at it and say, oh, you mean this? Deku would walk up, snatch the bottle from him and say, it's more than half empty, you fucking wanker. As John says, what's the big deal? It's just a bottle of Glen. And Deku says, it was my bottle of Glen that I was saving for today. Gosh damn it, how the fuck do I tolerate you sober? As Deku would sit down and he would just start drinking what's left of the Glen Luther. As basically Night-Eye would say, the boy, is he like you? And John says, the boy is pretty damn strong in his own right. He knows everything magical that I know plus more. As basically Deku's just like, yeah, I'm stronger than the old man. But apparently from what I've been told, he was a lot stronger back in his prime. So, pretty hard to tell. As basically Constantine says, yeah, went blow for blow with old Triggy back in my day. As Night-Eye would say, yes, my counterpart here wants to have a word with you. So, if you'll excuse me, as Night-Eye would start the phrase, change, O form of man, release the might from fleshy mire, boil the blood in heart of fire, gone, the form of man, rise the demon Etrigan. As he would immediately change into Etrigan, the demon. As Deku would spit out the Glen Luther and say, Etrigan, you're bound to that stick in the mud? My guy, we used to go pub hopping back in the day. You should have said something. As Etrigan's like, Izuku, it's been so long. And Etrigan would look and say, yet this feels so wrong. As he would sit Deku down, and John would say, alright, Etrigan, go ahead. Tell me, what's the reason you're here? And do me the favor, drop the bloody rhymes. As basically Etrigan would say, fine. I'm here to tell you to enroll Izuku into UA, college, university for heroes. As basically John says, I'm trying to convince him myself. Trust me, I want him out of here. The ladies see him and think he's a lost puppy. It's a real mood killer. As Basically, Deku's just like, I'm just not interested in going to a school. I'd rather just keep freelancing. As Etrigan says, if you do it, we can go pub hopping every day and you can crash at my place. Deku says, that a fact? And Etrigan says, you don't have to worry about rats. As Deku says, I'm in. Sign me up, Ecchi. Where do I sign the papers? As he would just pull out the documents and say, fill out all these forms, I'll turn them in, you'll get in through recommendation. As Deku's like, wait, I'm getting let in through recommendation. I'm getting a scholarship. Me, the guy with the bare minimum talent here. As Etrigan would just say, you put the bare minimum in, but you're far more talented than you let on. As Deku would say, well, you are right, but at the same time, I don't feel like, and Etrigan says, we'll go pub hopping. Deku says, okay, fine. And Etrigan says, to top it all off, a bottle of Glenluther, never opened, full. And Deku's like, okay, 1 second. As he fills out all the forms, as he just snaps his fingers and magically signs everything. Etrigan takes it, gives Deku the bottle, and he changes back to Night Eye. As Night Eye says, alright, since my business is done, come on, we're leaving. And Deku's just like, hold your horses. I'm gonna send us there in style. As Night Eye says, don't you dare, as Deku does a whole fucking transportation spell, and they're in Night Eye's house. And Deku says, you were saying? As he pops the lid off of the Glenluther and starts chugging. As Night Eye shows Deku to his room, as Deku would get in there and just start drinking, and he's like, good old Japan. Missed it, but then again, it holds nothing but pain for me. As he would just start to remember everything with his mother, his father, and he would just start crying a little bit. And then he says, tears are for fucking wankers. As he just wipes his eyes and chugs down more Glen to drown the misery out. As Night Eye says, oh, you're gonna be fucking annoying to live with. And Deku says, I'm here for Etrigan, not you. As Night Eye says, and Etrigan would be very happy to meet you again. But alas, I have work to get to, so be gone. And Deku's just like, I think the one who should be gone is you. Night Eye says, I can't believe this boy. As pretty much he walks out of the house as Deku decides, you know what, time to see what the pubs are like. So he gets out of the house as he starts walking down to try and find the pubs. And then he stumbles across a club and it says, now performing the wonderful Zatanna. As Deku's just like, oh, I've got to see this. As Deku's outfit that he's wearing is basically what's on the thumbnail. That's what he's wearing. So Deku's literally just in there chilling as Zatanna's on stage performing magic, as Yui is there as well performing on stage with Zatanna. As Deku's just like, well, ain't this something? Seeing both Z and Y on here. Wow. As basically a boy is there as well, and Deku sees that it's about his own age, as he says, so, what's your name? As the dude says, my name? Oh, Shoto Todoroki. As Deku says, well, Shoto Todoroki, Izuku Constantine, pleasure to meet you. As basically Shoto would say, Constantine? What type of last name is that? Deku says, a British one. I'm going to UA here. What about you? As Shoto would say, yes, I got in through recommendation. Deku says, what a coinkadink. So did I. As basically Shoto would say, so, what brought you here? Deku says, Zatanna and Yui. I've known them both since I was a wee lad. As basically Shoto's just like, wait, you know Zatanna and Yui? As Deku's like, well, yeah. I mean, I just told you I grew up with them. As Shoto would say, yeah, sorry. Kinda hard to believe. And Deku says, I'm somewhat of a magic user myself. As basically Todoroki asked him, oh yeah, rewind time. And Deku just looks at him and says, do I look like motherfucking Benedict Cumberbatch to you? And basically Shoto says, who? And Deku just smacks himself right in the face and says, fucking sod off, you wanker. As Todoroki says, well, geez, you ain't gotta get mad about it. Just wanted to see a magic trick. Deku just flips them off as he orders himself, a whiskey. As Shoto says, wait, you're gonna drink? And Deku says, drinking is so much more fun than fucking talking to you. As he just starts drinking. He takes out a cig and says, hey, I forgot my lighter. You got a light? As Todoroki says, no. As Deku says, really sure about that? As Todoroki says, no, as he turns away. As that's where Deku puts his cig right on Todoroki's face, as Todoroki says, the fuck? As his anger flares and he, lights his cigarette. As Deku says, hey, looks like you do have a light. As he puts the cig in his mouth and says, thanks for the ciggy, mate. As Shoto says, you fucking bastard. As Deku just shrugs and says, sod off, will ya? As he blows out smoke. As pretty much he watches the show to its end, as that's when, Yui and Zatanna see Deku and they're just like, oh no. As Deku begins to just wave, as he also orders another round of whiskey. As he gets his whiskey, Zatanna would go over there and would say, where's John? Deku says, I'm here on my own little lonesome. What, didn't Ejigan tell you? He gave me a scholarship to UA. And Yui's just like, no. There's no way in hell you're going to the same school as me. You're gonna decline. Deku says, can't love. Already accepted the bottle of Glen I was promised and signed all the paperwork. He's already turned it in. As she's just like, no. She says, Zatanna, can't you do something about this, Mom? And Zatanna just says, unfortunately not. And Deku's like, look, I'm not John. Whatever beef you had with him, you don't have with me. I'm new to this whole thing. Well, not really, but you get what I mean. I'm not in your little family drama. And that's when basically Yui would kind of cringe a little bit as she would scowl at Zatanna. As Zatanna would look at her and say, what are you scowling at me for? And Yui would just say, nothing, Mom. As she would storm off, as Deku would be like, mother-daughter fighting? I haven't seen her in 8 years and the first thing she does is tell me to go fuck off? Well, can't blame her. As basically Zatanna would say, look, why are you even going to UA? Deku would just say, well, want to become a hero that can save John's life. He's only got 5 years left. Lung cancer's a pain in the ass and it's really killing him. As basically Zatanna says, if all you're doing is trying to save his life, there's a lot better deals to go about it. And that's when Deku says, look here, you magical cunt. All I'm trying to do is save people and be a decent human being so I don't end up going to hell for the shit I've done already. I figure if I spend the rest of my life helping people, I might have a decent shot at getting into heaven. Because in case you didn't know, I sent my dear old mom off to hell. So you can sod off and stick it up your fucking ass, bitch. As he would take a puff of his cigarette and a sip of his whiskey. As Zatanna would say, you're exactly just like John. Everything's always about you, isn't it? And Deku says, for one, you're the fucking cunt who kept asking me why I wanted to go to UA. You made this about me. So why don't you fucking sod off already? I'm done talking to you. Let me enjoy my ciggy and fucking whiskey in peace. And that's when Zatanna would do a magical spell to dissipate his whiskey and put out his cig. And Deku's like, now you're just being an ass. As he would just get up and say, I'm out of here. Enjoy your little fucking gangbang. As Zatanna says, excuse me? As Deku says, what? Every guy in here is ogling your ass while you were talking to me. She would turn around and all the guys would immediately just turn back around as they would just be like, how's the sports? As Zatanna would just be like, that man. As Deku would go out for a walk, as he would run into someone. A blonde-haired boy who is really tall and has a very defined muscular body. As he would say, oh, sorry about that. As Deku would just say, oh, it's no problem, mate. Wasn't watching where I was going. So, what you doing here? As he would say, oh, I'm actually late for my job. As he would go running off his, Deku would say, hold up, I've seen your face before. As the boy would say, have we met? As Deku would say, you're Mirio, Night Eyes guy, right? As Mirio would say, wait a minute, Constantine? As Deku would say, bingo. Mirio would say, son of a bitch. As he would hug Deku, Deku would hug him back, and he would say, Mirio, I haven't seen you in forever, man. So you and Etrigan still good? As Mirio would say, yeah, me and Etrigan are good, but I honestly kind of prefer being around Night Eye. And Deku's just like, what? Why do you prefer being around that stick in the mud? I thought we all had fun pub hopping. As basically Mirio would say, you had fun. I ended up throwing up for a day straight. As Deku would say, that's for pussies, come on. The way you'd never stop getting fucking hungover is that you never stop drinking. Hangover doesn't happen. As pretty much Mirio would just say, man, look, I'm good. As Deku would say, suit yourself. He would start up as he would try to be lighting his cig, and he would realize he doesn't have a lighter. Then he remembers, I always have a lighter. Magic. So he would light up his cig as basically Mirio would say, still smoking, huh? Even what after happened to John, and basically Deku would say, what happened to him was his own fault. Me, I'm being careful. I don't smoke too much, but when I do, it's only 1 or 2 a day. As he would say, well, in this case, 2.5. And Mirio would say, half? How do you only smoke half? As Deku would say, Zatanna, that's how. Mirio would say, I see now. I see. As pretty much Deku would just say, yeah, well, anyway, I'm gonna head off. As Mirio would say, so, did you accept the offer? And Deku would say, you'll find out, won't you? As he just starts walking off. As Mirio would say, still a bitch, ain't he? As he would walk off, and Night Eye would scold Mirio for being late, but after Mirio explained himself, he would be like, the kid just can't help himself, can he? As Mirio would just say, well, he's not all that bad. As Nada would say, trust me, he's that bad. So basically, they have their little talk and we get back to where Deku's at. As Deku's just chilling. And for the rest of the 10 months that's leading up, Deku just goes drinking and smoking. Except for the last week, he actually senses something. As he starts to follow the trail, it leads him to Ewing. As she's about to go into somewhere and Deku says, hold it, love. As Ewing would turn back around and say, gosh, what the fuck are you doing here? And Deku says, I'm getting bad magical vibes from this place, that's what. What are you doing here? As Ewing says, I got a job to exorcise a demon. And Deku says, if I remember right, the only magic you were really good at was barrier magic, right? As Ewing would say, yes, and what about it? As Deku would just say, well, for one, you're not the brightest when it comes to exorcisms, and I've been doing them since I was, I don't know, 15. So I think I got a bit more experience than you. Don't worry, I'll let you take full credit for this, but I'm not about to let you go getting hurt. As Ewing says, you forget, I also have a quirk. And Deku says, and that's fine and dandy, but my magic, it'll shit on your fucking quirk. So how about you stop running your trap and let me help, eh? As she says, fine. As Deku opens up the door and there is the demon, soaking in a pool of blood after having killed about 30 humans, and after gutting them and pouring their intestines and organs and blood into a pool, he has their skins just hanging on meat cleavers around the house. As Deku walks in and says, bloody hell, you couldn't have done something nicer, you know, I don't know, like fucking Febreze? As the demon says, I think it smells fine in here. But what are you wanting, Constantine Jr.? And Deku says, that's where I'm gonna have to fucking stop you, mate. I ain't no fucking junior, you fucking wanker. As Yui says, I don't know, Constantine Jr. kinda fits you. And Deku says, I'll sod off, will ya? As he just starts an incantation, and the demon realizes that it's about to get fucked. Because Deku just summons a portal and then closes it on the demon, cutting it in half. As the demon just dies right then and there, Deku leaves as Yui starts to perform like the holy ritual, as she starts unloading holy water out, as Deku says, yeah, can't touch that. As Yui's like, I'm well aware that you can't touch holy water. Deku says, can't enter churches either. Otherwise, it'd be pretty bad for me. As Yui says, not surprising. And Deku's like, yeah, that all went downhill when I summoned that demon when I was 5, love. And Yui's like, wait, you did what? And Deku's like, oh, what? You weren't listening in when I told your mom to sod off. As she's like, what? No, I wasn't. And Deku says, yeah, in the past I sent my own mom to hell on accident. I was a wee boy, performing magic, trying to impress her. Summoned a demon without the binding spell. He threw her to hell. John came, killed the demon, saved my life, took me under his wing, and well, you know the rest. As she would realize that he's had a very hard life from a very young age. And she's like, yeah, well, stuff with my mom hasn't been easy either. As Deku would say, tell me about it. I'm all ears, love. She says, I will after I get done disinfecting this place. So basically, she pours all the holy water in there, flooding the place as it would start to burn, as the house would be engulfed in blue flames and would be burnt down to the ground where nothing was left. As you would say, now then, how about we talk over a drink? And Deku says, now we're talking love. And they go to a place, and Deku's like, a coffee shop. Should have known. And Deku says, well, luckily I carry bourbon with me. So he takes out his flask and starts pouring bourbon into his coffee. As he drinks it and says, much better. As Yui says, okay, I'll tell you about life with my mom. It was back when she was actually married to John. And Deku's like, wait, you telling me you're Constantine's daughter? Are you my stepsister? She says, no, not at all. My dad's Japanese. As Deku's like, the fuck? As she says, my mom cheated on John when they were together. She was in Japan doing a show. My dad wooed her. They got drunk. They had sex. She got pregnant with me. She felt so bad about cheating on John, but she couldn't bring herself to tell him. As John knew, but he wouldn't confront her about it. He didn't want to out her, as he called it. And that just drove her more and more as her own guilt would eat her alive. She would start fights with John and they would get out of control, as she would finally just say, yes, she cheated on him, but it was his fault for always being gone bar hopping place to place instead of being there with her. Just all the blame was always on John. And she told me that since you were Constantine's new kid, that I wasn't allowed to go near you or be friends with you or anything like that. As Deku says, is that why you always told me you hated me? As she would say, yeah. Basically, my mom told me to hate you from the bottom of my heart. And Deku says, your mom's a proper cunt, that's what she is. And basically, you know, Yui would say, yeah, she's a class act, alright. As Deku says, well, at least you're getting into UA because of her, though. As basically, Yui says, yeah, sorry about asking her to try and do something about you getting into UA. As Deku would say, water under the bridge, love. Water under the bridge. As basically, he would just say, so, how about we give us a try? As you would say, we'll see if you can woo me enough, Magic Boy. As Deku says, Magic Boy, now you're just being rude. I have a name, love. So basically, for the rest of the week, Deku and Yui would actually just be hanging out as friends, no dating, and it would be time to go to UA. And it was their first day, and Deku would realize that he's in class 1B because of his previous academic grades not being that high. And Deku's like, oh well, that's fine. As pretty much, he really wouldn't care. He's like, at least I won't have to put forth any real effort. As Yui would realize that she's in class 1B also, just because of the fact that, you know, they had to make a split. And since Momo and Todoroki were in class 1A, there would be, you know, two people from there, as Setsuna would be like kind of the third one. And basically, Kendo, she gets moved over to Class 1A as well. So, that's the class lineup. And Deku's just pretty happy, as he really just doesn't care. So, he's even chose not to wear the school uniform, as they would get on to him and he would be sent to the principal's office, and Nezu would sit down with him and Deku would say, look, I'm not wearing some stupid uniform, and second off, you're going to allow me to smoke. As Nezu says, and why would I do that? And Deku says, if not, I'll send your Mickey Mouse reject bitch ass to hell. As basically Nezu says, you can't do that. Deku opens up the portal to hell, and Nezu says, very well, I will accept your conditions. And Deku says, thought you might see it my way. As he would close the portal down, and Nezu would breathe a sigh of relief, as he would tell Vlad that he's allowed to smoke and wear whatever clothes he finds, comfortable. Everyone would look at Deku like, the fuck did you do? And Deku would say, I have my way with people. What can I say? As Vlad says, alright then, quirk assessments. And Deku says, sorry, I'm actually quirkless, so can we skip the whole part with me? And Vlad says, I will expel you if you don't. And Deku's like, bloody fucking hell. You really are a wanker, aren't you? And Vlad says, I'm sorry, I'm a what? And Deku says, wanker, W-A-N-K-E-R. That's what you are. As basically, Vlad would be like, you're one disrespectful motherfucker. As Deku would say, call it a family tradition. As he would just take a puff of his cig and says, oh, yeah, another thing. I'm not doing anything till after my ciggy. As Vlad would get continually pissed off with Deku, as he would be about to expel him, as he would say, I'll go first, if that makes anything better. And Vlad says, fine, go change and get ready for your quirk assessments. As Deku would head down there to the locker room, and Tetsu would realize Deku's actually jacked, and he's like, how the fuck are you that muscular with your attitude? You don't seem like you put any hard work into anything. Deku's like, I don't. I just have to fight a lot. As basically Monoma says, with your personality, I don't see that as being anything but the truth. As Deku says, oh, I can already tell. You're one of those high and mighty types, aren't you? As basically Monoma says, indeed I am. I am better than you. After all, I can copy whatever power you have. And Deku says, I'll say it once, I'll say it twice. I'm fucking quirkless, you wanker. As pretty much Tetsu just says, man, you do not have it easy, do you? Deku's like, not really, no. As he would just say, well, my name's Tetsu. As Deku would say, did you just repeat your name 4 times? As Tetsu would say, my name is literally Tetsu. As basically, Deku says, I get it, your name's Tetsu. And Tetsu would say, no, it's Tetsu. And Deku was like, I'm sorry, but what? As he would say, it's Tetsu. And Deku says, it's just Tetsu, right? You don't gotta repeat it 4 fucking times. As Tetsu would say, okay, we're not getting anywhere here. Just look and read. As he would show him his ID. And Deku's like, bloody fucking hell. Did your parents go fucking mad? As Tetsu would be like, I'm unaware, but I don't know. As he was like, they gave you your last name for your first name. Were they just bored, unoriginal, or drunk? or bloody fucking high. Whatever they was on, I don't need any. As Tetsu would just be like, man, you're already hurting my pride enough. And he's like, what's your power then? Fucking words? As Tetsu would say, no, I have a hardening quirk, as he would show him. And Deku would just say, I pity the woman that you plow, mate. Jeez, go easy down there, would you? As Tetsu's like, what? As Deku would just say, ugh, whatever you do, don't fuck anyone with your quirk on. As Deku just taps him on the shoulder and heads on out. As Tetsu's just like, I don't know whether to feel complimented or insulted. Monomo would just say, don't think too hard with him. As they would exit, as all the girls would already be there. As Setsuna would be looking at Deku as she would, kind of move to be positioned beside him. And she would say, hey, how do you know Yui? And Deku says, oh, childhood friend, I guess. As she's like, you have a weird accent. Deku says, it's British. Don't mind me. And she says, but you're Japanese. Deku says, yes, that's very astute of you. Ever consider I was raised in Britain? As she would say, sorry. Deku says, it's whatever. She says, well, you look pretty hot. And Deku says, you're not the first woman to say that, and you won't be the last. As she says, well, what do you say we have some fun after today? And Deku says, maybe. Depends on how drunk I can get. And she says, well, we can have drinks at my place. As Deku says, on you or on me? She says, on her. As Deku says, bloody fucking, well, I'm down. As she would give him her address, as Deku would say, I'll be there. And pretty much, she would just say, can't wait. As Yui's looking, and she just says that she can't believe she actually thought he would change. And Kendo says, what? Who? As Yui would say, Izuku. And basically he's just smoking a cig as he's waiting for everyone else to go. So Yui, she would go and she would actually use her quirk to shrink the baseball down and decrease its mass, and she would throw it as hard as she could. And then she would literally just undo a sticky note that she attached to it, which would create a barrier bouncing the ball even further, as it would go skyrocketing about 3,000 meters, as everyone would say, whoa. As basically Deku's like, well, guess I need to show you all up then, huh? As Deku would instantly just open up a portal to the upper part of the ozone layer and throw the ball in there, then close it. As Vlad would read infinity, since the ball would actually end up in space because of the low gravitational field in orbit. So, yeah. Deku would get infinity. And everyone would be like, he didn't even throw the ball. As Deku says, technically I did. I just threw it a centimeter. And that's where it went. As basically they're just like, this motherfucker. Deku says, I'm all about minimum effort and maximum results. As he would say, I think that makes it to where you won't be expelling me, will you, Vladdy? As Vlad says, Vladdy? And Deku says, yeah, that's what I'm gonna call you, mate. Vladdy, the bloody wanker. As pretty much Tetsu starts laughing as he tells Deku that Vlad's quirk is actually blood manipulation. As basically Deku's like, you actually are a bloody wanker. Fuck me. As Deku just starts laughing uncontrollably. He's like, that's the biggest fucking joke I've ever heard. As he would go off somewhere else, as he would just wait for everybody to get done. The race, Deku would just teleport to the end instantaneously. Winning that, the grip, Deku would just, do a weak ass grip because he doesn't need the results to be that high. And everything else, Deku just either uses magic to cheat his way through or just doesn't give any actual effort into it whatsoever. As Deku just says, well, that was a productive day. And pretty much, Deku's just like, well, I'll be off then. As he could easily teleport to Setsuna's house, but he chooses to walk with her. And on their way, that's when Setsuna is starting to get hit on by a lot of other guys, and some of them actually are near an alleyway, as they kind of pull Setsuna in and say, come on baby, show us those tits. As Setsuna says, no, get off of me. And Deku says, the girl says to let her go. I suggest you do it. And that's when one of them hits Deku in the face, as they start cutting Setsuna's clothes off, as Deku says, okay, we're gonna try this the hard way then. As Deku actually starts forming magic symbols around, and they're just like, wait a minute, what the fuck is this? And that's when Deku says, sorry jerk-offs, but we'll see you in bloody hell. So he immediately just starts setting all of them on fire, roasting them alive, as Setsuna is terrified of what Deku just did, but thanks him for saving her from getting raped. As Deku says, it's fucking cunts like these that give people a bad name. As he would stomp on their corpses, smashing their charred corpses into the ground, and he would just say, now then, let's continue on, shall we? As Setsuna says, sure, and Deku says, 1 second though. As he just teleports them to Setsuna's house, and Setsuna's like, could you have done that the whole time? And Deku says, well, obviously. As she says, then why didn't you? And Deku says, wasn't feeling it. And she slaps him across the face, saying, I nearly got raped because of you. And Deku says, well, you didn't get raped because of me also. So how about a thank you? As Setsuna says, just get lost. And Deku says, about the booze, and Setsuna says, fuck off. And Deku's like, oh, bloody fucking hell. So he ends up going to a bar where he starts drinking the night away. As Night Eye walks up and orders a margarita beside him, Mirio's there as well, as Mirio sits down by Night Eye and he orders a water. He's not drinking. And Night Eye says, don't be a buzzkill, Mirio, come on, drink with us. Mirio says, sir, I'd rather not. And Night Eye says, fucking pussy. As Mirio's like, fine. He orders a Jack, and basically he starts drinking, and Deku's drinking, Night Eye's drinking, and Deku says, what are you two drinking so hard for? Night Eye says, this case is turning out to be a nightmare. Yakuza-related incidents are popping up everywhere, and we can't seem to track them down for fucking anything. Even Etrigan's stumped. And Deku's like, is he, or is he just pretending to be stumped so you don't call him for your bullshit? As basically, Deku says, come on, if you want to have a fun time and forget about shit, then let's go somewhere a bit more fun. As Mirio says, where are we going? And Deku says, we're gonna go to a poker game. Just a lot more fun one. As he would go with Night Eye and Mirio, and Night Eye would smile and say, oh, we're going there. This will be fun. As pretty much Mirio's concerned. And they head over there as Deku opens up the portal, they all step through, And there they are, surrounded by demons, as Deku says, "Hello, boys. Set up a table. We're here to play." As they all know Deku's reputation, but seeing Night Eye there and the kid, they're like, okay, sure, this can't possibly go bad. As pretty much they decide that they set up a table for Deku, Night Eye, and Mirio. And along come three ladies, as Deku says, "Oh, we're gonna have a fun time tonight after all, aren't we?" As pretty much they're like, "Yeah, we'll have some fun." As Night Eye says, "Well, I could use this." As Mirio's like, "What are they talking about?" And Deku's like, "Jeez, how fucking pure are you?" As Mirio's just like, "I'm pretty pure," and Deku says, "After tonight, you won't be." As pretty much they decide to play strip poker. As Mirio's just like, "Well, won't bitch out now." So they decide that it's just like whoever loses first gets claimed by the second loser, and so on and so forth. So they start playing, and round after round, Mirio is eliminated first. Next is one of the women, as Mirio gets to have to be claimed by her, as she just takes Mirio to a back room, as Mirio's just like, "I don't know about this," and Night Eye says, "Don't be a bitch, loosen up a bit." As Mirio says, "Yes, sir." As Night Eye says, "Finally, now we can get serious." As Deku says, "Way ahead of you." As Deku only had to take off his jacket so far, and Night Eye's down to just his pants, socks, and shoes. As Night Eye's just like, "Well, guess I'll have a little bit of a peek then." As he activates his quirk for Future Sight, as he already knows what's going to happen, so he decides to shake things up a little bit. Sorry about that hiccup there, but oh well. As Night Eye decides he's going to cheat a little bit. So he nudges Deku, and Deku knows already what to do. So Deku sets Night Eye up with a royal straight flush. As Night Eye lays it all down, and they're just like, "Fuck." And Deku says, "Well, look at that. Someone was hiding a masterful hand." As they shuffle all the cards back, Deku actually hides a few of them up his sleeve. As he's getting ready. As Night Eye, he's hiding 3 aces in his hand, as Deku has basically 2 kings, 2 queens, and a jack up his sleeve. As pretty much they deal the cards right back out, Deku raises the stakes, and Night Eye, also raises the stakes. The girls call, and they end up folding. So basically, Deku and Night Eye win the game, and they get to pick their 2. Deku takes the red-haired one, as he goes into a back room with her, and Night Eye takes the blonde and goes to a back room with her. And keep in mind, these are human women, so they're not having sex with demons. So Mirio's girl is actually a brunette. As Deku takes his redhead into the room, and this is where the 18+ scene comes in. So yeah, you guys already knew this was coming from the title alone. So let's, stop being a little bit of a bitch and go straight up into this. As Deku would immediately lay the girl onto the bed, as he would already have her stripped down naked because of the game, as he would go down on her, eating her pussy, as she would hold his head there, and Deku would just say, "Well, I got a magical tongue, now don't I?" She says, "In more ways than one, Constantine." as Deku would start by pulling her closer as he would start kissing her. She would undo his shirt, revealing his body. She would rub her hand down his muscles as Deku would finish getting undressed, as she would be ready for him, as she would get on her knees and start sucking him off, giving him the sloppiest head he's ever had in his life, as Deku would hold her head there for a little bit, telling her to get a nice, good, long suck on that bitch, as he would pull her head back, letting her breathe a bit, as she would get on the bed and spread her legs. Deku would get in there and would start immediately fucking her as hard as he could, because he was eventually going to do this to Setsuna, but, you know, she told him to fuck off, so, second best ain't bad. After all, he's enjoying himself. As he keeps hammering her in, she starts moaning, and even the demons are just like, gosh damn, he's better than John usually is. And basically, Deku's just switching positions with this bitch like 20 different times, as she's just finally so exhausted she passes out, as Deku finishes up, cleans himself off, puts his clothes back on, and goes out there to the bar. As there he's seeing Mirio, who's just drinking to forget, all shooken up, and Night Eye, who seems very much more relaxed, as Deku is looking exactly like Night Eye, relaxed. As Night Eye says, well, how was it? Deku says, much needed. As Night Eye says, I feel you there. As they would toast to it, Deku and Night Eye would start to actually build a pretty good relationship, as Etrigan would, you know, be happy that Night Eye and Deku were, you know, having a good time. And Etrigan wants to have a go on this party, so Night Eye switches to Etrigan, and Etrigan really starts to liven up the party. He's flipping tables, setting people's heads on fire, chugging down fucking bottles of Glen with Deku as they go all through the shelves in alphabetical orders, as they get all the way down to the H's, as Mirio, he's passed out at this point. He didn't even make it past the G's. As Deku and, you know, Etrigan just keep on going as they clear out the whole fucking shelf, and they say, well, that's enough, as they head on out. But not before Deku takes all the fucking cash there, because everyone's passed out. Deku cleans the place out. He's not about to be broke. So he heads on back to his room, and Night Eye switches back from Etrigan, passes out on the sofa, Deku passes out on his bed, and Mirio just passes out on the carpet. And the next day comes around, Deku's pretty much good and sobered up. Mirio's puking his guts out in the bathroom, and Night Eye, he's pretty good. He's used to these nights with Etrigan drinking crazy with Deku, so he's not really that much affected. As Deku heads to school, as Setsuna says, hey, and Deku says, hey love. And Setsuna says, look, I'm sorry about last night. I was kind of just shooken up, and Deku says, well, anyone would be after almost getting raped. Yeah, you should see Mirio. As Mirio's right behind Deku, as he's just like, not funny. I was taken advantage of. And Deku says, you could have just said no. And Mirio says, then I would have been called a bitch. And Deku says, then don't complain. As Mirio just says, I swear, you are going to pay for this one day, Deku. As Deku would just say, yeah, but today ain't that day. And don't call me Deku. I hate that name. As basically Setsuna would ask why, and Deku would just tell her why, and she'd be understanding of it. As that's when Deku would actually see Bakago for the first time, as they would be entering school at the same time. Bakago would pause and say, Deku? And Deku would just say, oh, fucking hell. Yes, you loud fucking chihuahua. As Bakago would say, Don't call me a fucking chihuahua, you quirkless loser. And Deku would say, sorry, I call it like I see him. After all, he would transform Bakago into a chihuahua and say, sorry boy, this is no place for pets, as he would shoo Bakago away. Bakago would try to bite Deku, and Deku would punt him clean across the street. And Miro would say, turn him back. And Deku's like, fine. He would undo the transformation spell, and Bakago would be back into a human with a bloody mouth and a few missing teeth. As basically Bakago would just say, you fucking idiot. How? As Deku would just say, magic, mate. Magic. As he would head on into class. As Vlad would try to be teaching them everything, as Deku really wouldn't be paying too much attention. The days would come and go, the USJ event would happen, and Deku would be at class not really giving a fuck. But then he would start hearing these rumors that Class 1A is being attacked by villains, and Deku says, well, one way to know for sure now, isn't it? And Vlad's like, wait, can you get us there? And Deku's like, you're damn right I can get there. And that's when Ida would be there and, you know, screaming through the hallways for help. And Deku'd say, slow down there, mate. Look, I'll go there, I'll clean up the mess, and we'll be done, alright? As basically, Deku would open up a portal and step through it. And Ida's like, we had someone that could do this the whole time, and I had to run the whole way? What kind of bullshit is this? As Deku would pop his head right back out of the portal and say, it's not bullshit, it's magic. As he would just walk right back through. As he would get there, and people would just see him walking through, and he would just say, oof. As he would look and see Todoroki, as he would say, ah, you, my walking lighter. Yeah, light me up one, would you? And Todoroki's like, the fuck do you think you're doing? How did you get here? Deku says, magic, mate. Magic. As that's when Vlad would come through the portal as well, and would say, what do you think you're doing? You just put yourself in danger. As Deku would look and say, danger. Really, that's a funny one. As he would say, oh, there's a big guy right there. He would pull out an amulet from his pocket and say, good thing I snagged this from John. As he would use it, and it would basically turn the Nomu pitch black. As a minute later, it would start to just turn to dust and blow away. As Deku's just like, well, I took out the big one. As he would start doing that to every villain across, as Vlad would say, stop, you're killing them. That's not what we do here. As Deku would say, are you bloody mad? They're here to kill us. And you want me to what? Pour them a cup of tea and serve them a fucking biscuit along with my head on a platter? No thank you, you bloody wanker. As he would continue doing what he's doing, Vlad would try to stop him, and Deku would send him right back through the portal. As Vlad would be back in his classroom, and all the students would look at him like, what the fuck just happened? As Deku would just say, oh, to hell with it. As he would create a mass knockout spell. Just knocking them all out. And that would work on everyone, friend and foe. Because Deku's not really wanting to hear anything, and he's just like, I'll get a fucking lighter myself. As Deku would just go down there, as he would say, lighter. And Deku's like, ah, yes, thanks, love. As he's like, wait a minute. As he would look up and he would say, oh, I left the portal open. Well, that explains a lot. As pretty much all of the villains there, including Shigaraki and Kurogiri, would be captured. Because they all got hit with the spell to be knocked out cold. And pretty much, after they're captured and sent to Tartarus, they're interrogated heavily. But it would take a lot to get Shigaraki and Kurogiri to break. With Nomu dead, they really can't run any test on him, so they don't know what the deal is. Deku would be given a stern warning about killing, and Deku would think it's absolute bollocks, but at the same time, he has to obey their laws and rules, so he decides to grin and bear it. After that, he goes out for drinks with Yui, and this time he takes her to the bar, as he says, well, how about these? Good day's work done, and for you actually lighting me a ciggy. As Shinzo says, don't get used to it. Deku says, too late, love, already have. As he would say, light me up another one. And Yui would light it and say, last one for today. And Deku's like, yes, wifey. And she says, I'm not your fucking wife and I'm not your fucking girlfriend. Get that through your thick skull. She slaps him and then turns his cig to a absolute tiniest one on earth. As Deku's just like, oh no, that's just not nice. It's not even with magic. You used your bloody quirk on that. As Deku would reach for his pack and he would say, my last fucking one, really? And you do that to it? And she just says, sorry, not sorry. As Deku says, oh fucking hell. As he asks the bartender if he's got a cig, and the bartender says sorry, but no. Deku's like, fuck! So, he ends up just drinking. But he's not allowed to get fully drunk because Yui's there and she wants him to walk her home and not teleport her home. As they start heading home, as Deku's just like, this is unbearable. And that's when he actually runs into John, and John says, we need to talk. As basically, Deku's just like, can't it wait till morning, old man? As basically, John says, not this fucking time. And Deku's like, what the fuck you being serious for? What, some end of the world threat coming? As he says, it's Trigon. And Deku's like, oh, Triggy. Well, fuck off. You beat him once, you can beat him again. You don't need my fucking help. As John says, that was before I had cancer and before I was like fucking 60 years old, you little wanker. I don't have the magical power anymore. As Deku's just like, and what, you think I do? As John says, yeah, pretty much. And Deku says, look, if he ain't here now, he ain't gonna be here tomorrow. And he sure as hell ain't gonna be here first thing in the morning at 9 a.m. punching in a key card to go to work. So until that day where he's actually here, piss off. And basically Yui would say, look, don't be a dick to him. And Deku says, oh, excuse me, not being a dick to the man that, sure, took me in. Oh yeah, that's fine and dandy. But what I don't understand is, why can't I be a dick to the man who literally used me as a bargaining chip every time his debts came up? And it was every time that my life was on the fucking line and he nearly sold my goddamn soul. So excuse me for not being so generously gracious, but the fucking wanker can fuck off. As John says, oh, so that's how it is. I saved you from fucking sending your mother down to hell, and oh, now that John needs your fucking help, you fuck me in the ass, don't ya? As Deku says, I ain't fucking you anywhere, old man, that's fucking disgusting. Go handle your own goddamn problems, and leave me out of it. I'm done. As basically, John says, I guess you don't want to know who your real father is then, do you? And Deku's like, what are you talking about? As John says, if you really thought Hisashi Midoriya was your dad, you're sadly mistaken. And Deku says, what the fuck are you talking about, old man? As John says, I'm your biological father. As Deku says, there is no way in hell. There is no way in hell you're my biological father. And basically Constantine says, it was roughly around the time that me and Miss Zatanna were talking. We weren't dating at the time, but we were talking. And for one, I was in Japan, I got drunk, the bartender was your mother, she had a very rough time, I charmed her and, kind of spun my way with her. Well, she took me back to her house, and one thing led to another, and you ended up being conceived, and I ended up dating Zatanna, and by the time I knew about you, I was saving you from sending your mother to hell. But we all know that you sent your mother down to hell anyway. So, honestly, that was another failure on my part. But at the same time, I didn't know about you. I'm sorry. We never kept in touch. And Deku says, you never keep in touch with anyone you don't want to. Was my mother not that important to you? Oh, let me guess. A one-night stand for John Constantine to get his rocks off, right? Right before entering a nice little relationship with Zatanna, that you could have a fucking magical booty call every night. As John would say, I'm sorry, son. And Deku says, you don't get to call me son. Not after all this. As John would say, I'm sorry. I just didn't know. And Deku says, well, how long did you know? How long have you waited to tell me? As John would say, ever since you were 6. If you remember that time you got real sick, I had them do a DNA test. And it confirmed that you were my son. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but at the same time, I didn't think you were ready. And Deku's all about, how about all those other years then? All those years. And I was living with my own biological father. How fucking sad are you, John Constantine? As he tells Deku he's sorry. And Deku says, I don't give a fuck. And Yui asks Deku, where's he going? And Deku says, I'm going back to the bar. I need to drown this memory from my fucking head. And Yui just looks at John, and John looks at Yui, and he says, I'm sorry. And Yui says, don't be sorry. After all, you weren't the one that cheated. And John says, yeah, that's kind of the surprising thing in all this, is that marriage, I did nothing wrong. She did. As basically, John would head off, and Yui would head home by herself. Deku would be drowning his misery away with Glenn, as he would work himself through the entire Glenn catalog at that bar before getting cut off and going to another one and working its way through all those bottles of Glenn. Basically, Deku didn't, go home that night. And as for the League of Villains, since Shigaraki and them are captured, All For One's gonna have to find a new plan. As he would learn that the person that took down the whole League of Villains attack was actually Deku Constantine, a magical wizard. As that would immediately put All For One's plans, which, if you haven't read the manga, spoilers in 3, 2, 1, he wants to be a demon lord. So he decides to elevate those plans to become a demon lord, as he would honestly just start going off and going through more and more until he would come across a spell that would take time and preparations to do, but it would be enough to ultimately be able to really elevate him to that level. As he would start, going through and learning everything he could about the demon Trigon. As Deku would eventually wake up, as he would go back to school, and throughout the rest of the time there, they would tell him about the sports festival that's coming up. Deku wouldn't give a fuck about it, as he would just be keeping to himself. As he would notice, Yui would quit talking to him, as he would look around and look for her, as there would be a guy with yellow hair and a black dyed lightning bolt in his hair talking to Yui, as Yui would actually be kind of blushing around him as he would tell her jokes and all that, as Yui would laugh uncontrollably, and Deku would feel a little bit of jealousy coming over him as he'd be like, fucking wanker. As that's when he would notice a girl watching, the blonde-haired guy. As he would go over there to talk to her, she would say, oh, you're the guy that saved us, aren't you? And Deku would say, well, yeah, that'd be me. As she would say, my name's Jiro. What's yours? He would say, the name's Izuku Constantine. It's a pleasure to meet you. As Jiro would say, the pleasure is mine. And Deku would say, oh no, the pleasure is absolutely mine, love. You're breathtaking. As Jiro would say, thank you, as she would start to blush, as Yui would see that as Deku trying to get back at her. So, she would take Kaminari and kiss him right there in front of Deku. As Deku would just be like, well, ain't that something? As Jiro would just say, I didn't think they were like that. Deku says, I didn't either. And pretty much, Kaminari would just be following Yui around as she would pull him everywhere. As Kaminari would be like, so are we dating? And Yui would say yes. As Kaminari would be like, I didn't agree to this. And Yui would say, you do now, right? As Kaminari would say, sure, I'll agree to this now. Don't hurt me. As Yui would be like, don't worry, I'll only hurt you in the bedroom. As basically Kaminari would say, I'm still a virgin. As Yui would say, oh, I'll fix that. And Kaminari's just like, oh boy. And Deku's just like, come here, bolthead. As Kaminari's like, huh? And Deku says, you're coming with me. As basically Todoroki would be coming out and Deku would grab him by the shirt collar and start dragging him down the hall too. As pretty much Todoroki's like, where are we going? And Deku says, you're both coming with me. We're going somewhere. As Kaminari would say, Shoto, you know this guy? As Todoroki would say, once before, yes, not personally well at all. As Deku say, oh, we'll change that. We'll be the best of fucking buds. As he just teleports them into a bar. As Kaminari's looking around and being like, am I allowed to be in here? As Deku says, don't worry about it. As long as you pay, they don't give a damn. And I'm paying for the three of us. As pretty much Deku would just say, I want a private booth. As they would all go to a private room, they would sit down and Deku would just order all top shelf. As he would say, don't be shy, drink up, you bloody wankas. As pretty much they would start drinking, as Todoroki would be a rambling type of drunk, as he would ramble on about his daddy issues. And Kaminari wouldn't be that drunk yet because he hadn't been drinking that much out of fear, but seeing Todoroki drunk was just fucking amazing for him. It was comedy gold as he would be recording Todoroki. And he would actually send it to Yui, as Kaminari would actually take a picture of the three. Kaminari being smiling at front and center, Todoroki rambling with a beer bottle in the air, and Deku just chugging a bottle of Glen. As basically he would send it to everyone at school, and pretty much Nezu would just see Deku in there and be like, well, I'm glad they're having fun. And basically, he doesn't want to fuck with Deku at all. Vlad has had enough as he demands Deku be expelled, as well as the other two, and Nezu's like, nope, I'm not doing it. And Vlad's like, what? As Aizawa says, they're having fun. They're of age. Who cares? As pretty much Deku's just saying, so, you and Yui, the fuck's the deal there? As pretty much Kaminari would just say, I don't know. She came on to me, I was telling jokes. Honestly, I prefer Jiro, but I kind of like Yui as well. As Deku says, you can't have both, you bloody prick. Now choose one. As basically Kaminari says, I can't really choose. Sorry, I know that's not the answer you want. Don't hit me. As Deku says, I ain't gonna fucking hit you. But I'm gonna fuck Jiro, so I guess that'll make us even. And Kaminari's like, wait, what? And Deku's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, you want me to go into detail? Well, for starters, I'm gonna have her choking on my fucking cock, and then I'm just gonna slam the bitch inside of her. You getting the picture yet? As Kaminari's just like, if you're gonna do that, then I'll just take Yui up on her offer. And Deku's like, that's the whole bloody fucking reason I'm fucking Jiro. And basically, Kaminari's just like stuttering there as Deku's just sawed off. I'm fucking angry and I'm drunk. I don't know what the fuck's going on anymore. As basically he just keeps drinking. And John says, room for one more? As Kaminari says, who's the old man? As John says, his pops, and the one who's currently paying the tab. And Deku says, by all means, join us, old man. You got daddy issues over here rambling on. You got Mr. I'ma fuck Yui, so I'm fucking his bitch instead. And I'm just getting more and more drunk at the moment. And John says, well, I guess your friend ain't the only one with daddy issues, is he? As Deku says, oh no, I got over that last night. Completely drank the fucking misery away. I'm good now, Pops. And Constantine says, oh, so you're gonna help me? And Deku says, for a price. And John says, fine. 200-year-old ale. How about it? And Deku says, I want the whole fucking bucket. And John says, done. And Deku says, I'm listening. He says, I'm gonna need you to quit UA and come working with me now. As Deku's like, no can do. Under contract with Etrigan and Naitai, you know. The guy's not actually that bad of a prick. Mirio, on the other hand, well, he's a bit of a bitch. As John says, oh, you haven't seen him get serious yet, have you? As Deku's like, what do you mean getting serious? He says, he kind of has a split personality with Etrigan and Night Eye, you know. He gets serious, he tends to rhyme. And he's actually pretty strong. Not a bitch. He kind of has an Etrigan of his own. And Deku's like, Mirio rhyming while kicking ass, that's something I need to bloody see. As pretty much John would just say, well, enough with that, I'm gonna need you to come working. Deku says, I just told you I'm under contract, I can't break it. After all, you of all people should know that since you made the bloody contract. And John says, well, guilty as charged. Luckily I also know the loopholes. And Deku would say, oh, and what loopholes are that? And John says, in case I ever needed your help, the contract's void and null. Meaning you get off scot-free, kid. And Deku says, should have told me that earlier. I'll announce I'm leaving tomorrow. And Deku says, actually, wait till after the sports festival, then we can get to work. As John would just say, the sports festival, why do you, and Deku says, I'm gonna cause a big scene. They're not gonna have any choice but to get rid of me. As he would just say, okay. Can't wait to see how big of a mess this makes me. But fuck it, should be funny. So, Deku heads back to school and they continue going through it, and the day of the sports festival is there. As Deku's pretty much just chilling as they start the sports festival. Deku uses his techno magic as he just disables all 0-pointers and then just, teleports to the end. As he's just like, well, that was easy. As he sits there, whips out a bottle and starts drinking. As pretty much they all start saying, what the hell is this kid doing? And all that shit is basically, Deku's like, whatever. And pretty much he just doesn't give a fuck, as everyone else gets there at the original timing and whatever. Up next is actually something different from the cavalry battles. Seeing as how Deku can just use magic and all that, they decide that the order of people that will move on will be done in 5v5 battle format. And one of the people that's on Deku's team is Shinzo. As Shinzo is looking around and just like, how'd I end on the team of the drunk? And Deku says, luck of the draw, mate. You're bound to win this one. As Shinzo's just like, what? How? As Deku looks around and says, well, on my team you have me, you, Mr. Icy Hot, Electrocutioner guy over there, and then you have this babe right here, pointing at Jiro. As Yui would look and see that Kaminari is on the same team as Deku, and having Deku, throw his arm around Jiro, giving her kisses on the cheek, Yui would start to get a little bit jealous of that, and she wouldn't know why, considering she just finished having sex with Kaminari last night. And Deku would just be looking at her and would say, I got you. As she would just be turning her head the other way in anger and in just jealousy overall. As pretty much Deku's team would go up against people from the support course and general studies. They would easily win, and pretty much the matches would go on, as the final amount of people would be 10 people, and it would be Deku, Shinzo, Kaminari, Shoto, and Jiro, as the other 5 would be Yui, Bakago, Kirishima, Tetsu, and Ida. Those would be the final 10. And those would be the ones in the matchups. So, going through with this, the first matchup is actually going to be Deku versus Shinzo. And Deku's like, oh mate, that's some bad luck right there. Shinzo just says, oh, what do you mean? And Deku's like, well, I'm gonna have to kind of kick your ass. And Shinzo's like, huh? And Deku's like, oh, don't worry, it'll be painless. Relatively, anyway. As Shinzo's just like, okay. As Shinzo uses his quirk, and he actually does manage to get Deku with it. As Deku would just break free of it. as he's like, yeah, no working on me here, kid. As he would, teleport right behind Shinzo and grab him, and he would throw him out. As Shinzo would roll on the ground and just be like, wait, huh? As Deku's like, told you, be over in a jiff. As he would just say, the hell? Next fight would actually be Jiro versus Todoroki. As Todoroki would just freeze Jiro and win. Jiro would be kind of hurt by that, as Deku would be the one to comfort her. As he would give her a kiss and say, you did well. As Jiro would just say, thanks. As Deku would just start looking at Yui, as Yui would be kind of mad. And her fight would be against Ida. As Ida would try to hit her, she would use the magical barrier, which when Ida hit, he would knock himself out. Yui would be declared the winner and would move on. As people would say, wait a minute, aren't two of those students using magic? And they're like, magic? Wait, isn't that just for entertainment? And like, apparently not, as everyone would start to be muttering about magic all throughout the arena. And then it would be Kirishima versus Tetsu. And Kirishima would still beat Tetsu. So the last fight is Bakago versus Kaminari. Kaminari would get his ass whooped, as Yui would comfort him, as he would feel, thankful to Yui for comforting him, as Yui would give him a kiss and say that she wants more of what she got last night. And, Kaminari would be like, wait, now? And basically you would say, yeah, now. And Deku's like, you fucking bloody wanker. As Kaminari would be like, don't hurt me, man. And he would just say, oh, fucking whatever. As Jiro would get kind of jealous and would run over to Deku and would say, don't worry, after you win, you can get some. As basically, Deku's like, all in all, not a bad deal. I like it. As the next match would be Todoroki versus Bakago. And Deku doesn't want Todoroki to lose. So he does a compulsion spell on Todoroki, making him use his fire side as well. As with fire and ice, there's no way Bakugo's gonna win, and he loses badly. As All Might would be watching, and he would just be like, what happened? Young Bakugo, are you alright? As basically Deku would be like, the Chihuahua just lost. As Bakugo would just start running at Deku, and Deku's like, haven't you learned your lesson? As he turns Bakugo back into a Chihuahua, Bakugo would look around and be like, oh, just growling. As All Might would say, turn him back, as Deku would turn All Might into a boombox set, and everything All Might says is just remixed. Young Constantine, turn me back, as that would be how All Might would sound. As basically Constantine would turn them both back, and Deku would just be like, oh, fucking pops. As Constantine would say, it was funny, but if that's what you're planning on doing, and Deku's like, oh, no. So the next match would be Deku versus Ewing. As Deku's just waiting there in the arena, as Yui starts running down there saying, sorry, as she's late, and Deku says, oh, what, you done getting dicked down now? As Kaminari would just walk over there with a sigh of just relief, but also have a little bit of a tear in his eyes, as Yui'd be like, bet he's better than you. And Deku says, one way to find out love, ain't it? As Yui says, oh yeah, right, I am not fucking you. And Deku says, oh, well, I guess you'll never know. As Deku just starts taking off his clothes, as Yui's like, what the hell are you doing? And Deku's just like, what? Getting comfortable. As everyone in the audience is like, what is he doing? And John's like, oh, don't fucking do it. This dumbass is gonna catch a charge. As Yui tries to just hit him with everything she's got as she charges right at him. And Deku just sidesteps out of the way, tripping Yui along the way as she just tumbles out of the ring. As Yui just looks up and realizes she's out of bounds. And Constantine's just like, the man's a fucking mad lad. He just fucking stripped to piss her off and used her own momentum against her. Fucking genius. As that would be done, the next match would be Deku versus Todoroki. And with Todoroki still underneath the compulsion spell, he would still use his fire. And Deku would just say, oh, right, compulsion spell. As he would block the fire and ice, and he would just say, okay, instead of using that, walk out of the arena, would you? Pretty much, Todoroki walks out of the ring, and Endeavor's just like, the fuck? And everyone's just like, did he give up? And Deku's just like, nope, compulsion spell. I made him give up. And everyone's just like, the fuck? And with that, Deku would win the sports festival. And he would just take Jiro right then and there. He would whip his cock out and say, well, now's as good a time as any, right? And Jiro would just be like, fuck it. So she would start sucking Deku's dick, as Deku would just be enjoying himself, as he would start doing sexual things to Jiro, like sucking her tits, right there in front of everybody, mind you. As Deku would just bend Jiro over the fucking first place stand, and would start dicking her down, as everyone's just like, what the fuck? As Yui's just like, are you fucking kidding me? And John's just like, the boy's got fucking balls of steel. I can't fucking believe it. As he's just laughing his ass off. Night Eye's watching, and he's just like, oh god. Mirio's just like, the fuck is wrong with him? As Deku's just flipping off the audience and saying, this is all what you came to see, right? You fucking dirty wankers. As he just says, fuck the lot of you. While fucking Jiro, and Jiro's just like having her eyes roll back, her legs are about to give out. So Deku flips her over on her back into missionary position as he just continues on, as she's just like, her eyes are fully rolled back, her tongue's out like the full Akigao face, as Jiro's just like, can't even speak right now. As Deku finishes, as he says, now, that's the way you end off the night. As he puts his clothes on and just tells Jiro that she did good. As pretty much Deku's expelled. As he says, see, told you. They had no choice but to expel me after that. As it was all over the news. Like, local UA sports festival turned into porno at the end. As All For One's just like, well, the kid's got balls, I'll give him that. But his magic was quite impressive, especially the control he has over it. As Deku's just walking around with Night Eye, Mirio, John, and he's just like, well, that was fun. As Night Eye says, you intentionally did that so they would break the contract. And Deku says, damn straight. So with that, Deku won't actually end up going on the trip, which means he will not go to the training camp. So some time is passing throughout there as he's really just trying to hunt down all of the rest of the people that are Trigon's worshippers who are trying to bring him back. As that's going on, demons are popping up everywhere. Especially one demon called Nagal. As Nagal would call for John personally. As John would say, "No, not him. Not this fucker." As pretty much Nagal would tell John that he has a job for him. And with Etrigan there, like, Nagal would actually try to negotiate with Etrigan, demon to demon, but Etrigan wouldn't be having any of it. As Etrigan would try to go ahead and kill Nagal, Nagal would say, "I wouldn't do that if I was you." As he would say, he has the soul of Inko Midoriya inside of him. And Deku's like, "How the fuck do you have my mother's soul inside of you?" As Nagal would say, "Well, she was tossed into hell with no demon to follow." And John would say, "Well, that'd be my handiwork." As Nagal would say, "Oh, I know. I've been following you ever since Newcastle. The woman who you had a one-night stand with. I didn't think she'd mean much to you at the time. But now being the mother of your son, that makes it interesting." As pretty much John would say, "Alright, what do you want, Nagal?" As Nagal says, "I'll release her soul to you, including her body, but on the price that you eliminate all 6 other demons of my competitors." As basically Deku would just say, "I don't make deals with you." And that's when John would say, "Shut up, kid. You gotta make the deal. Otherwise, you have to give up on ever seeing your mother again." And Deku says, "Damn it. There's always a price to pay. What price will I have to pay for this?" As basically John would just say, "I don't know." And Deku's like, "I know a spell that can get us through this. Right here and now. We can kill this guy." And John says, "And what are you willing to sacrifice for it?" And Deku says, "Shut up." And John says, "No, actually think about this. How much are you willing to pay to get your mother out?" And Deku says, "Fuck it. Let's go kill these other demons." As Deku would be trying to track them down, but to no avail, as Nagal would be growing restless, as he would say that perhaps it's time to show them Inko Midoriya. As he would swallow up John and Deku, as they would see Inko. Inko would recognize Deku and John right away, as she would say, "My boy, what is he doing here?" As Deku would say, he knows about her affair. As Inko would say, "She's so sorry. She's so sorry." As pretty much Deku would ask what happened, as Inko would say that after she was thrown into hell, that she was used by them for sex, as she was constantly being gang raped every day. And then Nagal came and just took her after killing the demons and sealed her up inside of him, using her as a bargaining chip and threatening to kill her every day for his own sick satisfaction. As Deku would be traumatized, he would be so sad and hurt that he put his own mother through this type of pain and torment, as she would say it's not his fault. And Deku says, yes it is. I'm the one who summoned that demon. I'm the one that let this happen to you. And she would just say that she's sorry. And Nagol would say, time's up, as he would spit them out. And basically, Deku would go with John, and John would basically tell them that, alright, we need to hunt these guys down. And that's when they would actually get a huge lead after John banged the city of Tokyo incarnate. So, not the actual city, but, you know, the spirit of the city in human form. So, he would get the locations from them. Night Eye would go, Mirio would actually go, as well as would Deku and John. It would be a 4-on-6 battle, as they would end up killing most of them, as Deku would finally see Mirio getting serious, as he would say, Mirio the Slayer is here. Woo to you, woe to you, definitely you. And you, well, you can take a hot flaming poker up your asshole. As Deku's like, he's not much for rhyming tonight, is he? And basically, Etrigan would say, we're still working on the rhymes. As Mirio would just go ballistic, as he would manage to kill one of them. And Deku would say, ah, to hell with it. As him and John would kill the rest, as Etrigan would just breathe fire in one's face, just blowing it off. As they would finish and report back to Nagol, as Nagol would say, excellent. And that's when Nagol would double cross them. And Deku would say, oh, fuck it, John will pay the price. And John says, oh, fucking hell, here we go. So they would infect Nagol with love, and they would channel not just Deku's love for Inko and Inko's love for Deku, but John and Deku's love for Inko and Inko's love for them into Nagol, which would be enough to kill them. As Inko's body would lay there, and basically Deku would say, she's not going to remember us, is she? And John would say, afraid not, my boy, but that's probably what's best for her. As Inko would be taken to the hospital, and she would be treated for multiple broken bones, as she would also have bones that never fully healed properly. She would be basically on a slow and painful recovery. But that would be the last time Deku ever saw her, as he would choose not to associate with her to drive any more pain into her life. As pretty much Deku would end up just drinking by himself. But back at Yui's place, basically Zatanna would walk in on Kaminari and Yui having sex, as she would be furious and Kaminari would run. He would just have his boxers on and run out the door and all the way to his house. As Yui would be kind of pissed, as she would be shouting at her mom, as Zatanna would say, look, I didn't raise my daughter to be a whore. And Yui would say, oh, that's rich, coming from some cheating bitch who couldn't even own up to her own mistakes. As Zatanna would bitch slap Yui, and that would actually leave a mark on her. And Yui would actually run out of the house, fully dressed at this point, but she would run out of the house and would run down to the riverbanks. As Deku would be going back home, stumbling, drunk, he would see Yui down there crying, as he would go down there and would say, what's wrong with you? As he would see the mark on Yui's face, and he would sober up a little bit, and he would say, what's wrong? What happened to your face? As Yui would tell Deku what happened, Deku would have had enough of Zatanna's bullshit, as he would say, "Alright, come with me." As he would call John, and John would say, "No way in bloody hell am I going through that." As pretty much Deku and John would still end up arriving at Zatanna's house with Ewing, as they would all sit down and have a talk. And Deku would say, "Look, I am his son, she's your daughter. You made a mistake, and that's why you split from my dad." And before Deku could continue, Zatanna says, "Look, you don't know anything about my life." And Deku says, "I literally just saved my mother from being an eternal prisoner in hell and had to make it to where she will never remember me. So I don't give a fuck about your personal little pain. But that ain't giving you the right to go smacking around your own daughter, you fucking psychotic bitch." As Zatanna would say, "Look, I'm normally not like this, but the pain, the fucking having shit thrown right back up in my face, it was a one-time thing. Just let it go." As John says, "I was never mad. You were. You were the one who couldn't let it go, and you still can't let it go. I mean, ruining this boy's life and chance with your daughter because he's my son? Really? That's kind of pathetic. Shit didn't work out between me and you. That's fine and dandy. But you ain't ruining my son's life, Zatanna. Not anymore." As Zatanna would say, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just, I wanted to keep Yui safe." And you would say, "Safe? The only thing you made me do was make me hate you every second of every day." And Zatanna, hearing that, would just say that she's sorry. As Deku would just be sitting there and would say, "Fuck off." As John would smack him upside the back of the head and say, "Respectful boy." And Deku would be like, "When were you ever respectful?" And John would just say, "Fucking sod off." And basically, around this time, Yui would tell Deku about her having to go for a trip, and Deku would put some magical charms on Yui, as Yui and Deku would actually be dating right now. As she would break up with Kaminari. Kaminari would be relieved, as she would start to date Deku now, seriously, and would actually give him a fair chance. But the happiness wouldn't last long, as All For One would finally be able to trigger Trigon. He would have his summon circle, as he would summon the spirits of Trigon's followers, but he wouldn't be able to control which vessels they went into, as two people went far and wide, but Trigon's spirit himself took full control and possession over All For One, as his other minions would scatter far and wide, as one of them would find a young man with a plague doctor mask and would possess him. The other one, well, it found a suitable magical host in Yui and would take over her. And before the day came for Yui to head out, she would be possessed, and she would immediately attack Zatanna, as basically Zatanna would fight back, but it would be a useless struggle. The magic that Yui would be able to use, being possessed by Trigon's underlings, it would just amp her to the point to where she would be able to decimate Zatanna, and Zatanna would never be able to bring herself to kill her own daughter. Yui would end up blasting a magical hole straight through Zatanna's chest, killing her, and then running off. As basically John would run in after hearing the news, as he would see Zatanna dead, and he would be heartbroken. He'd be crushed, because at the end of the day, he loved Zatanna more than any woman on earth. And now she's dead. And John just couldn't handle it. He would head to a bar with Deku, as Deku would be getting more drunk, and he just wouldn't really care, as John would tell him everything that happened, and Deku's like, "What happened to Yui? Is she alright?" As he's going in and out of consciousness from drinking too much. As John would say, "Yeah, she's fine. I'm gonna have a few drinks, I'll wake you up when it's time to go." And Deku would say, "Alright, cool," as he would fall asleep. As pretty much John would be drinking, a man would come in with a black mask on, with severe demon horns, white hair, and 4 glowing red eyes, as he would say, "John Constantine." As John would look up, as his eyes would grow wide and say, "Bloody fucking hell, Trigon." And basically, he would say, "We took out all your worshippers. There should be no one left to take you on." And basically, Trigon says, "You are wrong on both accounts. My followers are not always out in the public. Some like to hide in the shadows. Others, they were useful for spreading information, but their intellect, useless. This host is perfect. He's lived for centuries, and on top of that, his powers are quite vast. And if I add my own," as he would grab John by the throat, choking the life out of him, and he would say, "You won't be surviving this," as he would snap John's neck. As he would throw it, as he would hit Deku, Deku would wake up, seeing John's lifeless corpse with blood pouring out of his mouth. Deku would be enraged, as he would try, but All For One would just hit him with the biggest blast of Trigon's energy that he could manage, and Deku would be sent flying right through the bar and out into the ground, as he would be too drunk to do anything, and that blast would have hurt him, as All For One would go over there and slam his foot down on Deku's stomach, as Deku would yell out in pain before Trigon knocked Deku out. As Deku would be knocked out, as Night Eye would come across there, seeing John's dead body, and he would just see Deku beaten, battered, and unconscious. As Mirio would say, "This is bad," as he would pick Deku up and take him to the hospital. As Deku would be in the hospital, as he would wake up, he would look around and would see everything, and he would say, where am I?" As Mirio would explain everything that happened, and Deku's like, "Damn it, not again." And during this time, there would be a news article going on about a huge mass of dead bodies at the UA's college training camp. Pro heroes, the Wild Wild Pussycats, have been killed in action, as well as the teachers Vlad King and Eraserhead. Along with that, multiple student casualties have occurred, with about 12 deaths, and the rest in critical condition. And pretty much Deku would just be astonished. He would be like, "What happened? What actually happened?" And pretty much, like, the ones that died were a majority of Class 1B. And Deku would just be destroyed, as he would say, Yui was supposed to be on that trip. And as they would show footage of the attack, Deku's eyes would grow wide and his heart would sink as he would say, it can't be. Yui killed them. As Night Eye would say, this isn't going to end well. Even though she's possessed, she'll never be able to be a hero ever again. As Deku would just say, I know, damn it, I know. As he would say, well, I have some exorcisms to perform. And pretty much Deku would get out of the hospital bed, as he would still have like broken ribs and shit, but he would use magic to heal himself. As he would decide that it's time to pay an old friend a visit. As he would appear next to a swamp, and there would be something coming out of the ground, and Deku would turn around and say, hey Swampy. As Swamp Thing would say, what are you doing here? As Deku would say, well, for one, letting you know John's dead, and for two, I need your help. As Deku would tell Swamp Thing everything that's happened and about the huge risk that Trigon poses to the world. And Swamp Thing would tell him to piss off. He doesn't care. As long as he's not, purposely attacking the green, he has no real reason to help. And Deku makes sure to tell Swamp Thing that he's a fucking cunt, and that he needs to help because even the green will be affected. And Swamp Thing just says that until the green is attacked, he will not move against Trigon. And Deku says, you fucking useless sap. So what does Deku do? He uses magic and removes the human inside of Swamp Thing, which ends up killing Swamp Thing, as Deku would just crush the human into nothingness. As basically Night Eye would say, was that really necessary? Deku says, I really don't give a fuck anymore. I'm an anti-hero. I kill people. And pretty much he would walk away, knowing that he has to do something to save Yui first. So that's his top priority, is to hunt down Yui. And eventually he does succeed in hunting her down, as he tries to fight her, as Mirio tries his best, but he gets sent flying back. As he would try to get back up, but he just couldn't. He's hurt too bad. He can't move. As Etrigan would try, and Etrigan would do very well, but at the same time, he couldn't keep it up for long. And that's when Deku would just openly ask the spirit if it wanted a stronger magical host. As basically, the spirit would say yes, and Deku says, even trade then, me for her. You let her go and you get me. Easy as can be. And the spirit would accept the terms, leaving Yui's body and going into Deku's. And that's when Deku would perform a self-exorcism spell, which would cast the spirit out of Deku's body and dissipate it, sending it back, as Deku would run over there to Yui, as she would wake up and ask what happened. As pretty much Deku would tell her everything that happened, and she would be so sorry and so destroyed inside, as Deku would say, it's okay. Everything will be okay. As he wipes it from Yui's mind, as Yui would fall unconscious, as Deku says, take her to the house. As Etrigan would say, sure. As basically Etrigan would take Yui to the different dimensional house that just pops up everywhere whenever you need it and disappears at will. And basically Yui would be recovering in there for the rest of the story. Now, a few more months would pass as the Yakuza members would get more and more violent and brazen, as Deku would eventually start helping Night Eye out with this case, since there would be no new activity about the Trigon stuff that's going on. So they would actually go on patrol, and that's when this little girl would be running, as Deku would catch her, as he would be able to immediately read her mind, and he would know everything that's happened and would see every place that she's been to, and would eventually see the Trigon version of Chisaki. Not Trigon, but Trigon's minion possessing Chisaki. As pretty much he would tell her to sleep, putting a sleeping spell on Eri. As Mirio would take her back, as Deku would run back with them, just a lot slower than Mirio, because Deku's trying to lead this son of a bitch that's following them somewhere. And it's not actually Overhaul, it's one of his lackeys, as basically the lackey follows Deku into a dark alley, and that's when he gets hit by Mirio using his quirk and knocked out, as Mirio would stomp on the villain saying, "Wake up, bitch, we got some answers." And basically Deku's like, hold up, you fucked up the line. We got some questions and want some answers. I love that you're trying to do the whole brutal thing, but at least keep your lines right, mate. And Mirio's like, whatever, as he would slam the guy against the wall and say, now talk. How much pain you go through is completely up to you. As the man says, I won't tell you anything. And that's when Mirio breaks the guy's leg. And all this time, like, Eri, she's already back at the Night Eye agency. Deku teleported her there. So Night Eye is having to deal with a little Eri that's crying profusely, and Bubble Girl's trying to make her smile. Which Night Eye and Bubble Girl are a thing in this. So that's Night Eye's main booty call. As pretty much Deku's just like, looks like that hurt, mate. You might want to start talking before my friend here decides to tear off your testicles. And basically Mirio says, not a bad idea. As the man says, hold up. You're not really going to do that. As Mirio says, you're right. As he knees the guy in the balls so hard he cries. And Deku's like, ooh, sounds like that hurts. You might want to start talking now. As the guy just shakes his head saying, I'll never betray Chisaki. As Mirio says, looks like he doesn't want like his balls. As Mirio keeps kneeing him in the balls, and Deku's like, damn man, you're gonna end up busting those fuckers. And Deku's like, oh fuck, it was fun at first, but alright. As he puts a compulsion spell on the guy to get him to tell the truth. As the henchman would say everything that he knows, including the location, Night Eye would formulate a, strike team, but would have Deku in there for magical assistance, since he does know that Chisaki is possessed in this. So the strike team is a lot different, because instead of Kirishima being with Fat Gum, it's Tetsu, because Kirishima was one of the people that died from Yui's attack. I said it was a majority of Class 1B, but not all Class 1B. So some of the casualties from Class 1A included, Kirishima, Uraraka, Asui, and Bakago. Those were the 4 from Class 1A that died. And pretty much, the ones that died from Class 1B are Ibara for one. Then the other one, you have Sen, you have Rin, Monoma, Pony, which leaves 4 more deaths, which you also have Juzo that died, you have Manga that died, Setsuna died, and the last one is that glue-looking guy named Kojiro. He died as well. As pretty much that were all of the Class 1B kids that died, so yeah, it would honestly be a pretty sad and pitiful mess for the heroes to have to deal with, because UA already has a terrible reputation since a lot of people died. They were almost shut down, but they did survive barely. And Tetsu is one of the only kids that's able to go to a work study because of, he's one of the only people that's going to have a huge majority of heroes looking after him as well. As for Tamaki, he's still there. Tamaki and Nejire are there, but since Uraraka and Asui are dead, there's no one really there except for Jiro. Jiro's the one that takes their place. So that's the team that we're rocking with on this one. As pretty much they get ready to enter, and Deku puts magical charms on Tetsu and Jiro to protect them from magical outbursts or possessions. As he does that on every single person as well, making sure that they don't get possessed. As soon as they head in, they're open fired upon by people shooting, as some of the pro heroes do get shot. Rocklock, he's actually shot in the head and killed. As other pro heroes that were there, like the lesser named ones, they all die as well, as Deku has a magical circle that's bulletproof and is protecting his people from, being shot to death. As Deku immediately just starts casting magical spells, and that's when Night Eyes had enough. He changes into Etrigan, as Etrigan just starts going through there saying, "Etrigan the Slayer is here. Woo to you. You too. Definitely you." Killing them. And he's breathing fire down the halls, just avenging all his fallen comrades. As everyone's just like, holy shit. As pretty much they keep going, and Deku eventually gets to where Chisaki is. Fat Gum and Tetsu end up going and fighting against Rampa. And basically, once they beat Rampa, Tetsu, as hurt as he is, he still gets up and has enough strength left, and he activates his quirk one good time and punches Rampa straight in the throat, killing him. As Fat Gum says, "What? No, what are you doing?" As he goes over there to the other one and snaps its neck as well. So both Rampa and the barrier guy are dead. As for Tamaki, he's actually with Nejire in this one, fighting those 3, and they actually take them out pretty easily, but they don't kill them. It's only the newer people that's actually ended up killing. As for Jiro, she's staying at the entrance, locating all positions of everyone in there and relaying them. As Deku is taking out the people that can't be seen or got, like the guy that's, you know, changing all the walls and shit. Yeah, Deku easily just sends a back feed to him and just kills him. As for when they get to Chisaki, with the quirk erasing bullets being perfected in this, he's actually a lot more dangerous. As he tries to use it on Deku because he thinks Deku's using a quirk. Well, not Chisaki, but, you know, the lackey that shot Mirio. He shoots Deku. Nothing happens. And that gives Mirio the time to really just go under the ground and hit him square in the face. Since Aries not here in this timeline, it's purely just to kill or take out Chisaki, which Etrigan is saying kill him. As for Mirio, he's a lot more brutal in this, knowing what they did to that little girl and coming straight from her mouth and seeing her tears. He literally is no mercy. He's gonna kill these guys. And that's exactly what he does. Punching the dude straight in the neck, and then to finish it off, he uses his quirk to phase inside the guy's body and then just let his quirk go, which kills the guy instantly. And pretty much all that's left is a possessed Chisaki, which puts up way more of a fight and is actually able to use some magic. So he ends up actually blowing off one of Mirio's arms as Mirio screams out in pain, as pretty much Deku tries his best to stop the bleeding, which he does do, as Etrigan ends up just going over there and blowing fire on the wound to cauterize it and just seal it up. As Deku's pretty much trying to use a exorcism spell, but it's not working because he can't get enough time to finish the incantation before he's nearly killed. So Etrigan is pretty much holding on to Chisaki as Deku just says, "What the hell with it," as Etrigan actually gets his leg blown off by Chisaki by him actually touching it, because he does touch Etrigan's arm, which blows it off, and he frees one of his arms, and then he just blows off the opposite side's leg. As Etrigan is screaming out in pain as he changes back to Night Eye, who's bleeding out, as Deku takes out the, amulet and just hits Chisaki with it, killing him, turning him into ash. As Deku rushes over there and tries his best to heal Night Eye, he's too late. Night Eye's dead. He died from bleeding out, as Etrigan is dead as well. And pretty much Deku just thinks this is all his fault, and he already knows, like, he is going to kill All For One. Like, there's just no doubt in his mind now. He has to kill this son of a bitch. Like, he needs to die. So after Mirio's pretty much just like in the hospital, as he says, well, he could still be a hero. And in this one, like, hero society is falling apart so fast with all the losses of heroes just dying left and right. People think that heroes aren't strong enough to protect them anymore. As people are starting to ask, like, who's here for us? Who can actually help us? As pretty much Deku just has had it. Like, Yui's watching everything unfold from the house, and she wants to help, but at the same time, she's so traumatized that she can't. She doesn't even want to use magic anymore. And that's when, like, Yui is visited by somebody holding a golden helmet. and says that it's time for a new agent of fate to be chosen. As Yui would put on the helmet and become the new Dr. Fate. As she would teleport right to Deku, as Deku would say, "What in the bloody fucking hell is this?" As Yui would say, "It's her." As the spirit would allow Yui to have certain privileges, as she would make a deal saying that, she still wants to have her life, and if she has to become Fate, then Nobu is going to work with her. She will have her life, or she'll have Deku just erase the spirit of Fate. And Nobu knows Deku can do it. It would take him an extremely long time, but he could do it. So he agrees to let Yui have her own life, separate from Fate, but also work as Fate when needed. So that's what Yui and Nobu have going on. As for the whole other arrangement, there's someone else out there who has some potential, and Deku goes to see him. As he says, "Hey, Shinzo, right?" As the guy says, "What do you want?" As Deku says, "We want you to become a hero." And Shinzo's like, "Why me? I don't have a quirk that's really strong. I'm nothing." And Deku says, "Jesus Christ, you're a fucking disgrace. Pull yourself together, you bloody fucking wanker." As Shinzo's just like, "What do you know, man? Villains are taking over the world. We're all gonna die eventually." And Deku says, "Then why don't you just fucking go out swinging instead of being crying in a corner looking for your mama's tit, boy?" As pretty much Shinzo would just say, "Maybe you're right, but who knows?" And Deku says, "Oh, for the love of God." As he smacks Shinzo across the face and says, "Man up, drink a beer and come on." As pretty much Shinzo drinks and he says, "If you got more, I'm with you." Deku shows Shinzo a whole fucking bloody pub right for the taking. Shinzo says, "I'm in." So that's pretty much the team. It's Deku, Ibara, and Shinzo. As Shinzo's taught how to better use his skills, he is taught some magic, because it is a few months before they're ready to fight. All for One is with Trigon inside of him, especially since he's not really making himself known. And it's hard enough to track a motherfucker down with mass panic in the street. So yeah. Pretty much though, Shinzo learns to use voice changing magic. And All Might, he's still running around trying his best to save people and put a smile on their face, but eventually All for One's ready, as he makes a huge explosion in the ground, and All Might's the first on the scene. As All Might's getting ready to battle All for One, and All for One says, "You won't be beating me this time, All Might. I have transcended. I am now the Demon Lord. All for One." And All Might says, "I'll still beat you." And All for One just laughs and says, "I doubt it." As he rushes at All Might, and All Might can't even react. As All for One punches All Might so hard that All Might's throwing up blood. And he's only using a fraction of the power that Trigon's giving him, because, once again, he is Trigon's vessel at this point. As Trigon takes over and says this will be an easy fight, as he rips off All Might's arms, then rips off his legs, as All Might's screaming in pain, and then Trigon stomps a hole straight through All Might's chest, killing him. as he parades around the #1 hero's corpse. As that's when Deku appears with, Dr. Fate, Ewing, and Shinzo, Master of Voices. As Shinzo starts to, kind of berate and send magical voice effects all around the area, trying to get Trigon to talk. As Trigon talks, Shinzo activates his quirk and mutes Trigon, bringing All For One back to the surface, limiting the power. Because when Trigon's in control, he uses all of his power. All For One's in control, he can only use a fraction of it. As that's when Yui uses the spells of fate to bind All For One down, as Deku rushes over there and uses an exorcism spell. And when Trigon is expelled from All For One, Deku says, "Alright, Azarath, no trios, Zinthos," which would seal Trigon. As Trigon's in a little tiny ball, Deku would say, "I'll be right back," as he would rush over and teleport to Titan's Tower, as he would walk in on Damien and Raven having sex, as he would say, "Hey, get your fucking cock off that rock," as he would take the gem from Raven's forehead, and Raven says, "What are you doing?" And Deku says, "You didn't even notice your own father's out of the fucking gem." And Raven's like, "Oh god." And she says, "I'm coming." And Deku says, "Oh, I'm pretty sure you are coming, but stay right there. I'll have him back to you in a jiffy." As he teleports off, and Raven's like, "Oh god." As that's when, Deku gets back, as he says, "Azarath, no Trion, Zinthos," once more, funneling Trigon into Raven's gem, and would put it back on Raven's forehead as soon as that was done. Deku would be seen as a hero, and right before he could be celebrated as one, he would go right into the bar, pop it off and start drinking, saying, "It's fucking happy hour, you wankers. Sod off, I'm trying to be happy." As he would just start drinking, and pretty much Shinzo would join him. As they would start drinking more and more, Deku would say, "Well, that was pretty fucking easy." And Shinzo's like, "You think we worked too hard for this?" And Deku's like, "Probably. Who fucking cares?" As pretty much he said, "No, if that would have been actual Trigon, we would have been in a fucking bind. Because there was no way in hell that shit would have worked. But Vessel, it works just fine." As basically Deku would go on to be an upright, arrogant asshole all throughout his years, and would actually end up marrying Yui. Yui would still continue to be the new Dr. Fate, and would be seen as the new #1 hero of Japan, while Deku is the #1 asshole of Japan. They would eventually have a child. It would be a girl, and to honor Deku's mother, they would name it Inko Constantine. As Deku would say, "Well, it's a beautiful life, ain't it?" As Yui would say, "Yeah, it really is." And with that, we come to a close. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, I've been the Crown Fiend. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys for 6,000 subscribers. I really do appreciate you guys. Let the Fiend Army rage hell for many more to come. Peace.